College life. A time for learning, laughter, and for some unlucky souls, a dance with death. Here's a spine-chilling tale about a killer with a penchant for young co-eds. Let's take a dark stroll through the Dormitory Slasher. Chapter 1. The First Sighting. It was the beginning of the fall semester at Westbridge College, a time of excitement and new beginnings. The girls' dormitory, known as Hawthorn Hall, was bustling with activity as students settled into their new rooms, eager to start the year. Among the residents were Jenna, a bright and ambitious sophomore studying biology, and her friends Lisa and Megan. The trio was inseparable, often seen studying together in the library or hanging out in the common areas of the dorm. Life was good, and the future seemed full of promise. Jenna was particularly excited about the upcoming semester. She had worked hard over the summer to secure an internship with a renowned professor, and her schedule was packed with challenging courses that she was eager to tackle. Lisa, on the other hand, was more focused on the social aspects of college life, always planning the next big outing or party. Megan balanced the two, enjoying her studies while also making time for fun. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows across the campus, Jenna decided to head to the library to get a head start on her assignments. She said goodbye to Lisa and Megan, who were planning to watch a movie in the common room, and made her way across the quad. The library was quiet, the perfect environment for Jenna to concentrate. She found a secluded corner and buried herself in her textbooks, losing track of time as she worked through her assignments. It wasn't until the librarian announced that the building would be closing in 15 minutes that Jenna realized how late it had become. Gathering her things, Jenna made her way out of the library and into the cool night air. The campus was eerily silent, the usual buzz of activity replaced by an unsettling stillness. She quickened her pace, eager to return to the safety of her dorm. As she approached Hawthorn Hall, Jenna noticed something strange. The hallway leading to her room was dark, the lights flickering intermittently. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but she brushed it off, attributing it to a malfunctioning light bulb. When she reached her door, she was startled to find it slightly ajar. Jenna was meticulous about locking her door, and the sight immediately set her on edge. She pushed the door open cautiously and stepped inside, her heart pounding. Her room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside her window. Jenna reached for the light switch, but before she could flip it, a hand clamped over her mouth and a cold, sharp blade pressed against her throat. "Don't scream!" a voice hissed in her ear, sending a chill down her spine. Jenna's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make out the figure in the darkness. The intruder wore a mask, obscuring their face, and the glint of the large kitchen knife in their hand was unmistakable. "Please don't hurt me," Jenna managed to whisper, her voice trembling. The masked figure chuckled, a low, sinister sound. "I won't hurt you if you do exactly as I say." Jenna nodded, tears streaming down her face. The intruder dragged her to the bed and tied her hands and feet with rough, scratchy rope. As the killer tightened the knots, Jenna's mind raced, searching for a way out. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice shaking. The killer paused, the knife hovering inches from Jenna's face. "Because you remind me of her, the one who got away." Jenna's heart sank as she realized the killer was referring to the unsolved murder from years ago. This was no ghost story. It was a nightmare come to life. The intruder's grip on the knife tightened, and Jenna's fear escalated. "Please just let me go," she begged. Before the killer could make another move, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jenna's roommate, Lisa, was coming back from a late-night run. The killer's grip tightened on the knife, and Jenna knew she had to act fast. "Lisa, run!" Jenna screamed, her voice breaking the eerie silence. Lisa froze in the doorway, her eyes widening in horror as she took in the scene. The killer lunged at her, knife raised. Lisa managed to scream and turn to run, but the killer was too quick. The knife plunged into Lisa's back and she fell to the floor, lifeless. Jenna's scream was cut short by the killer's hand over her mouth. "See what you made me do?" the killer hissed. "Now behave or you'll end up like her." Tears streamed down Jenna's face as she stared at Lisa's body. Her mind raced, desperate for a way to escape. Suddenly, the sound of sirens filled the air. The killer cursed and fled through the window, disappearing into the night. Jenna was left trembling on the bed, bound and gagged, tears streaming down her face. She struggled against the ropes, her hands raw and bleeding. Moments later, campus security arrived, alerted by Lisa's scream. They untied Jenna and escorted her to safety. And there you have it, dearies. The beginning of a tale where shadows and sharp knives roam freely. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where the hunt continues and fear takes root. Chapter 2. The Aftermath. Jenna sat in the brightly lit common area of Hawthorn Hall, her hands trembling as she held a cup of hot tea. Megan sat beside her, her face pale and drawn. The events of the previous night were still fresh in their minds, and the loss of Lisa weighed heavily on them. Campus security and the police had swarmed the dormitory after the attack, questioning everyone and searching for clues. The hallway where Lisa had been killed was now a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. The whispers and rumors among the students grew louder, and fear spread like wildfire through the dorm. Jenna had given her statement to the police, describing the masked intruder and the horrifying moments leading up to Lisa's death. The officers assured her they were doing everything they could to find the killer, but Jenna felt no comfort in their words. She couldn't shake the feeling that the killer was still watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The college administration held an emergency meeting, deciding to increase security measures around campus. Additional patrols were assigned to the dormitories, and a curfew was imposed. No one was allowed outside after dark without an escort. Despite these precautions, the atmosphere of dread persisted. Megan looked at Jenna, her eyes filled with worry. "Are you sure you're okay to stay here? Maybe we should go home for a while." Jenna shook her head. "I can't leave. I need to be here to help the police. And besides, I feel like if I leave, it means the killer wins. I don't want to give him that satisfaction." Megan nodded, but the fear in her eyes remained. "Just promise me you'll be careful. I don't want to lose you too." The next few days were a blur of police interviews, campus lockdowns, and memorial services for Lisa. The once lively atmosphere of Hawthorn Hall was replaced with an oppressive silence, as students stayed in their rooms, afraid to venture out. Jenna and Megan clung to each other, their friendship providing a small measure of comfort in the midst of their grief. One evening, as Jenna and Megan were getting ready for bed, they heard a knock on their door. Jenna's heart skipped a beat, and she exchanged a nervous glance with Megan. She approached the door cautiously, peeking through the peephole. "It's just me, guys," came the familiar voice of Emily. their neighbor and a fellow student. Jenna let out a sigh of relief and opened the door. "Emily, you scared us," Jenna said, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry," Emily replied, looking genuinely apologetic. "I just wanted to check on you two. This whole thing has everyone on edge." Jenna nodded. "Thanks for checking on us. We're doing our best to stay strong." Emily stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I heard the police are still looking for the killer. Have they found any new leads?" Jenna shook her head. "Not that they've told us. I just keep reliving that night over and over in my mind, trying to remember anything that might help." Emily reached out and squeezed Jenna's hand. "We'll get through this together. Just remember, you're not alone." As Emily left, Jenna and Megan locked the door and double-checked the windows. The added security measures were comforting, but the fear remained. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the killer was still out there, watching and waiting. Later that night, Jenna was jolted awake by a loud noise. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding, and listened. The sound came again, a faint scratching at the window. Jenna's blood ran cold. She nudged Megan awake. "Megan, do you hear that?" Jenna whispered. Megan rubbed her eyes and listened. The scratching sound continued, growing louder. "What is that?" she asked, her voice filled with alarm. Jenna crept to the window, her hands trembling. She pulled back the curtain slightly and peered outside. The darkness made it difficult to see, but she could make out a shadowy figure moving near the window. "Megan, call the police," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone outside." Megan grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking. As she spoke to the operator, Jenna kept her eyes on the figure, trying to make out any details. The figure moved closer, and Jenna saw the glint of a large kitchen knife in their hand. "The police are on their way," Megan said, her voice trembling. The figure outside seemed to sense that they had been spotted. With a sudden, fluid motion, they disappeared into the darkness. Jenna pulled the curtain back, her heart racing. "They're gone," Jenna said, her voice shaking. "But I saw the knife. It was the same one from that night." Minutes later, the police arrived, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the dormitory. Officers searched the area around the window but found no trace of the intruder. Jenna and Megan gave their statements, describing what they had seen. The police assured them that they would increase patrols and keep a closer watch on the dormitory. But Jenna knew that as long as the killer was still out there, no amount of security would make her feel safe. As the officers left, Jenna and Megan huddled together, trying to find comfort in each other's presence. The fear and tension were palpable, and sleep seemed impossible. "We'll get through this," Megan said, her voice filled with a determination that Jenna hadn't seen before. "We have to stay strong for Lisa." Jenna nodded, a sense of resolve settling over her. "We'll find a way to stop him. We have to." The terror deepens as our brave girls face their fears head-on. The killer is still out there, lurking in the shadows. Stay tuned for the final chapter, where the ultimate confrontation awaits. Sweet dreams, and may your nights be free of shadowy figures and sharp knives. Chapter 3. The Confrontation. The atmosphere in Hawthorn Hall was tense, each day feeling heavier than the last. The campus was on high alert, but the fear among the students remained. Jenna and Megan were determined to find a way to stop the killer, who had already taken so much from them. Jenna couldn't stop thinking about the shadowy figure she had seen outside her window. The image of the glinting knife haunted her dreams, and she knew that until the killer was caught, none of them would be safe. The police had increased their patrols, but the killer seemed to be one step ahead. As the days passed without any new leads, Jenna and Megan decided to take matters into their own hands. They began to dig deeper into the history of Hawthorn Hall, looking for any clues that might lead them to the identity of the murderer. One evening, while combing through old campus records in the library, Jenna stumbled upon a newspaper clipping from years ago. The headline read, "Brutal dormitory murder, killer still at large." The article detailed the unsolved murder of a student named Sarah Williams, who had been found dead in her room, her body mutilated. "Megan, look at this," Jenna said, handing her the clipping. "This has to be connected." Megan read the article, her eyes widening. Sarah Williams. "Do you think the killer is targeting girls who look like her?" Jenna nodded. "It makes sense. The killer said I reminded them of the one who got away. Maybe they think they're finishing what they started." As they continued to dig, they found more articles about Sarah's murder. There were eerie similarities to Lisa's death, including the use of a large kitchen knife and the brutal nature of the attacks. Jenna and Megan decided to visit the old campus archives, hoping to find more information about Sarah Williams and her connections. They spent hours sifting through dusty files and old yearbooks, piecing together a picture of Sarah's life. Late one night, as they were about to give up, Megan found a photo of Sarah with a group of friends. One of the girls in the photo looked strikingly familiar. "Jenna, look at this," Megan said, pointing to the girl. "Doesn't she look like the woman who spoke at the memorial service for Lisa?" Jenna squinted at the photo. "You're right. That's Emily's mother." They quickly gathered their notes and headed back to Hawthorn Hall. They needed to talk to Emily and see if she knew anything about her mother's connection to Sarah Williams. When they arrived at Emily's room, they found her sitting at her desk, looking through old photos. "Emily, we need to talk to you," Jenna said urgently. Emily looked up, her eyes red from crying. "What is it?" "We found something in the archives," Megan said, handing her the photo. "Your mother knew Sarah Williams, didn't she?" Emily's face paled as she looked at the photo. "Yes, she did. They were best friends. My mum never talks about it, but I've always known there was something she was hiding." Jenna and Megan explained their theory about the killer targeting girls who resembled Sarah Williams. Emily listened, her expression growing more troubled by the minute. "There's something else you should know," Emily said quietly. "My mom used to tell me stories about a boy who was obsessed with Sarah. He would follow her around, leaving her creepy notes and gifts. She thought it was harmless at first, but it got worse. The police questioned him after Sarah's murder, but they couldn't prove anything." "Do you know his name?" Jenna asked. Emily nodded. "His name was Mark Hastings. He was expelled after Sarah's death and disappeared. No one knows what happened to him." Jenna's blood ran cold. "We need to find out if he's still around. If he is, he could be the killer." Fueled by the weight of their discovery, they contacted the police and shared their findings. The police began searching for Mark Hastings, hoping to finally bring him to justice. That night, Jenna and Megan returned to their room, exhausted but hopeful. They had done everything they could to help the investigation, but the fear lingered. They knew the killer was still out there, watching and waiting. As they prepared for bed, Jenna heard a noise outside their window. Her heart raced as she pulled back the curtain and saw a shadowy figure standing in the courtyard below. It was the killer, and he was watching them. "Megan, he's here," Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. Megan grabbed her phone and dialed 911, but the killer moved quickly, disappearing into the shadows. Jenna knew they had to be ready. She grabbed a heavy lamp and stood by the door, her hands shaking. Minutes later, the police arrived, but the killer was gone. The officers searched the area but found no sign of him. Jenna and Megan were left to wait, their fear and tension growing with each passing moment. As the night wore on, the dormitory fell silent. Jenna and Megan sat on their beds, clutching their makeshift weapons, listening for any sign of the killer's return. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the killer lunged into the room, knife raised. Jenna swung the lamp with all her strength, hitting the killer and sending him crashing to the floor. Megan joined in, hitting the intruder with a metal chair. The killer scrambled to his feet, but the police arrived just in time, tackling him to the ground and disarming him. They pulled off the mask, revealing the face of a man twisted by years of obsession and hatred. It was Mark Hastings. Jenna and Megan watched in shock as the police handcuffed Mark and led him away. The nightmare was finally over. As the sun rose over Westbridge College, the students of Hawthorn Hall began to emerge from their rooms, the fear that had gripped them for so long slowly fading away. Jenna and Megan stood together, their bond strengthened by the ordeal they had faced. "We did it," Megan said, her voice filled with relief. "We stopped him." Jenna nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. "We'll never forget Lisa, but now we can start to heal." And so, dearies, the tale comes to an end. Jenna and Megan faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But remember, sometimes the shadows of the past are never truly gone. Sweet dreams, and may your nights be free of lurking figures and sharp knives.